Good evening, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media outlets, the FanSided Network, and FinFanatic.com as well. Better late than never here. Paul was it Disneyland or Disney World? Can you hear me there, Paul?
Yep, helps if I'm not on mute. I was at Disney World hanging out with our good buddy Clint Miller, and great time, man. I had to move the hat down because my tan line from that Florida sun was showing.
Clint Miller, brother of the godfather of the On the FinSide podcast, Brian Miller. Definitely miss hanging out with those guys for sure.
Absolutely.
So, Paul, Dolphins win their fifth in a row, 20-9 over the Giants. And just a quick recap here, the Giants took an early 3-0 lead. Well, not early. It was the second quarter when Barkley and Devonta Parker had back-to-back 23 and 17-yard runs. The Dolphins couldn't get out of their own territory early in the game. Middle of the second quarter, the Dolphins put together drives of 47 and 89 yards for a field goal and a touchdown, make it 10-3. And then after halftime, it's they score to make it 17-6. And then a 7-play. No, excuse me. I see at halftime, I was saying that when the Dolphins were up 10-3, if they score after halftime, this game is over. The Giants are not scoring another point here. The Giants are not scoring 10 points in the second half. It's just not going to happen. And they didn't. They ended up scoring 3 points. So it was 10-6 Dolphins. Then after a 7-play, 61-yard drive, capped off by a touchdown by Isaiah Ford, it was 17-6. A few Jalen Phillips sacks later, and it was pretty much all done and over with. So, Paul, looking at the rest of the AFC now, the Dolphins go from a 4% chance of making the playoffs to a 6% with this win. They beat the Jets, it goes to 7% as we sit right now. They beat the Saints after that, goes to 18%. They beat the Titans, goes up to 35%. Then if they seal it off with a win over the Patriots, they have an 82% chance to make the playoffs. The short story is the Dolphins have to run the table here.
They do, and it's kind of funny. You and I plan some of these things off the air. We don't just jump on here and wing it until I start talking fullbacks and Isaiah Ford. But I actually, and it was ironic that you had sent me the thing that we were going to talk about the playoff chances. I sat down, and New York Times has a great playoff chance predictor, where you can do a lot of different things depending on how involved you want to get. So before I picked the Dolphins games, I sat down and basically picked every remaining game of the NFL season. And then I went ahead and picked the Dolphins games. And basically, if every single thing on the planet falls exactly the way I put it in the predictor, Miami wins out, they go to the playoffs. If Miami loses a single game, they don't. It's simple as that. It's you have got to run the table. You've got to knock off the Patriots in Week 18, which feels weird to say. You've got to get there riding an 8-game winning streak. That's what happens when you roll into a 1-7 hole to start the season.
Absolutely, and that's what it's going to come down to. And the Dolphins, over the last 2 years, here late in the year, haven't gotten much help from the NFC. And 9-8, we thought a couple weeks ago might be able to get them in. I don't think that's the case anymore. You take a look at the rest of the AFC. You've got 8 teams that have 7 wins already. So the Dolphins, with 4 games left, are a game and a half to 2 games behind several different teams here. They're 13th in the AFC right now at 6-7, which is weird. But let's not let that detract from the fact that Dolphins have won 5 games in a row, which is extremely difficult to do in the NFL. I don't care if you're playing the weaker part of your schedule. Yeah, like you see some of these teams, from week to week tripping up. I mean, the Vikings losing to the Lions, who hadn't won a game this past week, and a game that they had to have. Those for any team over a 5-game over the span of 5 games. You're seeing them drop usually at least one. Not the case here for the Dolphins. And when they get back from the bye week, they've got the Jets at home, and the expectation is that they're favored by more than a touchdown, and they get to 7-7. That's where the fun begins here for the final 3 games.
It really is. I mean, the Saints are struggling a little bit right now, which Miami has after the Jets on, I believe it's a Monday night game. The Titans are without any weapons other than Ryan Tannehill right now, and they're struggling as a result. We've all seen Ryan Tannehill play without any weapons. And then, you've got the Patriots remaining, which the Patriots are running as hot or hotter than the Dolphins. The one thing I will say is this defense right now, I can't recall in recent memory watching a defense playing, and I know some of it's the opponents, but in that mix you've got the Ravens and you had the Carolina Panthers, who are both good teams. I can't recall seeing a team play as good of defense as Miami's doing right now, and that's with some holes.
And even the game before the 5-game winning streak, they held the Bills to 3 points in the first 3 quarters. Before they allowed 23 in the fourth quarter, but 2 of them were on shortened fields. So, yeah, I mean, you look at the last 5 games now, the Dolphins have trailed just twice. They trailed 3-0 to the Ravens. They trailed 3-0 to Giants and to the Giants in this game. That's it. So they're able to get up on teams and have that lead and control the pace of the game, just like they did after they recaptured the lead. Even though the Dolphins weren't leading by a lot in this game, it always kind of seemed like they were, because it just felt like the game was in hand.
It did, and a lot of that had to do with, and I know, so I'm gonna do my 2 doom and gloom things here real quick. Actually, I forgot one of them, so it's just gonna be one of them. The number of dropped passes by this team right now frustrates the ever-loving crap out of me. It's watching this game. There were a lot of drives killed by just straight-up drops, critical drops, third down drops. Mike Gesicki and Tua did not feel like they were in sync in this game. He had a touchdown pass that folks thought got batted at first. It did not. It just bounced right off his face mask. He had a couple of passes out in the flat that would have been good for first downs that he blatantly dropped. And then he had one tough-to-catch ball that we normally see him make the catch on. That frustrated me. Albert Wilson is probably the most frustrating player on the team for me right now. He's going to drop the most catchable of balls, including when he's wide open. But when he actually gets his hands on the ball and holds on to it, he's capable of electrifying things, which we saw in a late reception by him in the second half. So it's very frustrating to see an explosive player that can't quite hang on to the football. I feel like Albert Wilson has worse hands than Jakeem Grant does, by far.
Ooh, I've got to disagree with you on that.
Nope.
Yeah, but I mean, Albert Wilson in this game, and we'll get to the couple of things to unwrap there, is Wilson dropped one pass, but it wasn't really a drop. I mean, he got clubbed pretty good. That would have been a really tough catch to make. But
not that one. Not that one. That's not the one I was fully referring.
Which one were you?
There was the one where he broke away. I forget which defensive back it was. Broke to the inside and was clean, and it went straight through his hands. So maybe it didn't go down as a drop. He had his hands like this. The ball went between them, and then he went like that. And It was in the first half. It was on a third down, and it was brutal. It was ugly, and quite frankly, it pissed me off watching it.
I know the play you're talking about. I have to see it from a different angle then, because I looked at that and I thought, oh, that ball was wide. Maybe it wasn't.
It wasn't.
If you saw it from a different angle. So, but staying with your point there, because it's a really important one, is Tua was 30 for 41 for 244 yards, 2 touchdowns. And you talked about a couple of those drops or very tough catches that could have been made. I counted 6 of them, not even including the Albert Wilson one that you were referring to there. Even if we put that aside for a second, just looking at it here, there was the one off Jalen Waddle's hands over the middle in the second quarter that was on 3rd down. There was one off Gesicki's hands that would have been, again, he extended for it, but got both hands on the ball, didn't come away with it. Also, that one that doinked off his head in the end zone. There was the third quarter drop by Jalen Waddle where Tua whipped it quickly over the middle. And if Waddle catches that and makes one guy miss, he's gone. And he ices the game right there. Durham Smythe, who didn't have a catch in this game, early in the game in the first quarter, Tua throws the ball right over the shoulder of Aaron Robinson, and Durham Smythe does not come away with it. He's got to come away with that, given the limited opportunities that he has there in the passing game. And then there was one more. But if you account for that, that means that out of 41 passes, Tua 36 out of 41 times, 87.8% of the time, either completed the pass or put it on both of his receivers' hands.
He could have been the first quarterback in NFL history to complete 80% or more of his passes in 3 straight games. And it's a situation where you can say he's just throwing short passes, and he does throw a lot of those, but he threw to all 3 levels at times in this game, and without issue. He was hitting the ball into the tightest of windows. Ryan Fitzpatrick brought up last year while he was still the starter. He was asked what he saw in Tua, and he said that Tua has elite accuracy where he can fit balls into windows that Fitzpatrick could only dream of on a regular basis. And we are seeing that now. It's crazy the way that he throws the ball to a place where the defender, even when they jump, is going to miss it by inches consistently. The way that he's making those back shoulder throws, the way that he knows exactly where to put the ball for those toe tap catches we saw several times in this game. There are so many situations that are magical with where Tua puts the ball that at this point in time, I'm going to be 100% honest, he has earned another year for us to fully analyze whether he's the guy or not. 100%.
Right. I'll tell you this. I'm a Dolphins fan. That's why we do this show. I've said throughout the year that Tua is the guy that needs to do well this year for the betterment of the organization. I would have never called myself a Tua believer, but I'm further along that line than I ever have been. And one thing that I saw talked about, this past week on, with the media was, what is Tua's main thing? What is his superstar quality? How about elite accuracy? Which, by the way, is probably the most important thing in the entire game to have. And Tua is demonstrating that. And he's doing.
I'm with you 100%.
Behind a bad offensive line, a historically bad offensive line, and no running game. The running backs again in this game, and it wasn't all their fault, but 23 carries for 67 yards, 2.9 yards a carry, and I don't think they had a rush over 7 yards out of their running backs. So, yeah, I mean, you're starting to see it, and the big thing is too, Paul. The one thing we do have to keep in mind though is, in the last 3 games, that's when it's gonna matter, because the Saints have a really good defense. The Titans' defense is hit or miss, but really good when they're on. And then you've got the Patriots' defense. Those last 3 games, that's when it's really going to matter, not just for the Dolphins' playoff chances, but for Tua.
The defense that worries me the most in there is the Patriots' defense. The Titans' defense is no Panthers' defense. The Saints' defense is no Panthers' defense. The Ravens have a pretty good defense. The Giants actually have a pretty good defense overall. And Miami's been able to do this against some very good defenses during their 5-game stretch. The Jets' defense, it's better than their offense.
Yeah, and to go back on that point too, I think it's easy for people to say, well, the Giants aren't that good of a team. You know, they're 4-7. They haven't been good the last few years. Like I said in our pregame, over the last 5 games, the Giants were holding opposing starting quarterbacks to a quarterback rating of 66.2. They also faced Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Tom Brady among those 5 teams. And this was the first game all year the Giants did not force a turnover on defense against the Dolphins here. So there's a lot to be said with the way that Tua played and with what the Dolphins were able to accomplish there on offense. To me, the reason for so many 3-and-outs were those drop passes that ended up ending those drives. I mean, we talked about 6 or 7 drop passes or passes that could have been caught. That ended 4 drives.
Not just that. You take the 6 you pointed out. We'll skip the Albert Wilson one that I was talking about before. That takes Tua and puts him at, let's see here.
Grab that calculator.
30 plus 6. 36 for 41. 36 for 41. Any team in the league would kill for that as a final stat line. I mean, it's no Mac Jones-like statistic where he only had 1 incomplete pass on Monday Night Football. But it's pretty damn good.
Mac Jones, 2 for 3 for 19 yards. Completion percentage of 66.7.
It's all in how you write the headline, Kat. You know this.
So. I guess so. But Tua on the season now, Paul, has a completion percentage of almost 71. And again, I don't want to make Drew Brees comparisons, but stylistically, that's why people say he's like him, because he has incredible accuracy, incredible touch. He is willing to go. I mean, so many games when I'd watch the Saints, and I watched so many Saints games, you know, over Drew Brees' tenure, he would start those games 8 for 8 for 40 yards, and it wouldn't be all that impressive. And then he would hit the long one, and you kind of see a lot of that more in Tua's game. So, but that accuracy being there first is important.
It is, and you're seeing a lot more than just the accuracy with Tua. You're seeing him with the escapability right now. And granted, the offensive line's done a better job the past few weeks in pass protection overall. They're not, by any stretch, a great offensive line. But they've helped create a pocket for Tua to throw from. And when they've had issues, Tua's escaped. One of the sacks this week was not on the offensive line in any way, shape, or form. It was 100% on Myles Gaskin. Why he didn't pick up the blitzer, he looked at him and then said, nah, I'll scrape out instead. The offensive line has kept Tua pretty clean overall the past few weeks. And you're seeing a team that you're seeing the passion from Tua. Tua was pissed at himself when he skipped the ball on 3rd down. Tua didn't take it out on Jalen Waddle when he didn't catch it, but you could see the frustration and the come on moments. You see the offensive line jumping around and playing with an infectious attitude right now. You see the receivers playing with an infectious attitude right now. And on defense, good Lord, do you see them playing with an infectious attitude right now. And that helps you elevate your game to that next level, especially when the entire team is playing as a single unit, which for the most part they are right now.
I'd like to see that infectious attitude be more applied to not dropping passes. And
I would too.
Eichenberg and Austin Jackson. Look, Eichenberg and Austin Jackson, I mean, the offensive line in general has been usable and playable over the last few weeks. And getting Michael Dieter back, I thought, was a underrated upgrade over what we've seen over Austin Wright over the last couple of weeks. And look, Liam Eichenberg had an embarrassing sack early in the game against Quincy Roche, where he basically, kneeled to the ground, and I thought he was hurting on the play. And then the other one, Austin Jack, we may be talking about the Azeez Ojulari sack on there, where you said where Myles Gaskin bailed out. I saw Austin Jackson not picking up his assignment on that. But other than that, I thought Jackson shockingly had a pretty good game. So did Eichenberg. And then I thought Dieter played well. Robert Hunt had a very good game. Jesse Davis allowed 4 of the Dolphins' 8 pressures in this game at right tackle. We've just come to expect that. We're just going to deal with it.
That's better than anticipated, and he's playing improved, even though it's not very good.
You're going to get what you get with Jesse Davis. I mean, if they were going to flip him and Robert Hunt, they would have done it weeks ago. I wish they would have. So do you, but it just doesn't look to be in the cards at this point. But also, Paul, going back to the receivers, and we've dogged the drops here throughout the show, but these receivers can do special things. I mean, Jalen Waddle is fast off the snap. He gets elite separation already. And I mean, he can go from one side of the field to another and just outrun people too in his routes. To put it in perspective, Jalen Waddle needs to average 4 catches for 38 yards a game the rest of the year in the final 4 games. I think we can agree he's going to do that. And if
he should have had double-digit catches for 100+ yards in this one again.
Definitely. And if he had caught those 2 passes, if he'd come down with those 2 other ones, you'd be talking maybe about another, 9-catch, 140-yard performance here.
Or if he didn't realize he wasn't down, you might at least have the 100 yards.
That was weird too. And I'd like to see a little bit, more of that killer instinct in him on things like that, where he gets up and he wants to skate toward the end zone. And I want to see that as a returner too, or else get him off returns. But
get him off returns anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he's not looking great there. But
he's not great enough to risk what he's doing on the offensive side of the ball.
100% agree. And to that point, Jalen Waddle needs to average in the final 4 games 4 catches for 38 yards to have over 100 catches on the season, over 1,000 yards, and to set the NFL rookie receiving record for most catches, breaking Anquan Bolden's record. So it should be more probably 110 plus on the season, even if it's 17 games. So, but also too, I go back and I think we've been on the same page with this, Paul, and a lot of Dolphins fans, I think, have disagreed with us in general. This is why you have Devonta Parker. And I know it's been frustrating over the last really season, going back to the middle of last year with the injuries, but he's somebody that can roll out of bed and be a star in the game. And we saw that here in this contest.
He was critical. He had, I think, 3 of his catches were good for first downs.
Yeah.
And on Isaiah Ford's touchdown, he was open too. So he very easily could have added a score and made it 6 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. The interesting one I'll say, speaking of Isaiah Ford, Mac Hollins and Isaiah Ford, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 7 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We brought the Ford back out of the garage in this one. I've got one more passing thing, but it's for the Giants side of the ball that I want to nitpick on, so I'm going to let you take it from there.
Yeah, and also Mac Hollins has just 2 catches in his last 3 games for the Dolphins, both of them major catches. He had the great catch in this game at the end of the first half that really became the play of the game. Great catch between James Bradbury and safety Xavier Kinney, where he batted the ball back up, dragged his foot in the end zone. Great catch. Everybody saw it. And yeah, Isaiah Ford with that catch. And I who would have thought at the beginning of the year when we saw Gesicki, Parker, Will Fuller, Devonta Parker, that Mac Hollins and Isaiah Ford would combine for 5 touchdowns this year. Nobody would have ever thought that.
Daryl Johnston didn't seem to believe it in the game this weekend. Even after they went to a commercial break, he continued, and with blanking on the other commentator right now, with the other commentator literally saying Mac Hollins did that, and the catch Mac Hollins made, repeatedly saying Mac Hollins' name. Daryl Johnston just refused to call him anything but Mike Gesicki for about a full 5-minute span for that touchdown.
Well, and also too after the touchdown,
Yeah.
They showed the graphic of the player and it said touchdown Mike Gesicki. So the graphic
Mm-hmm.
people couldn't get it right either. I mean, I 88 and 86, I kind of understand. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah, but I mean, eventually you've got to figure it out. You've got monitors in front of you. You're watching the replay. You had a commercial break, and you still come back from the break with the play going up again, and your fellow commentators telling you it's Mac Hollins, number 86, and you're still going, Mike Gesicki, man, you can't stop him on these routes. This is what he does well.
it's
comedy.
I think that when the Dolphins were 1-7, they assigned Myers and Moose Johnson here to this game, and they just didn't take him off him now that the Dolphins have won 5 in a row. That's my theory on that, because I think this is the third time they've been on commentary, and it's like,
oh yeah,
called him Isaiah Parker. Chris Myers did on one play, so yeah, it's Anyway,
so
what were you going to say? What was the point you were going to get to there on Mike Glennon?
The real weird thing to me, and I double-checked myself to make sure I wasn't crazy with this, and I like the fact that the officials just kind of let the guys play this weekend. To throw the ball out of bounds as a quarterback, you have to get outside the tackle box, especially if there's any type of pressure whatsoever. And the numerous times that Mike Glennon lofted the ball out of bounds this weekend, with somebody bearing down on him, there were only 2 or 3 times he was outside the tackle box. And that, by definition, is technically grounding. So it was interesting, and if they're not calling it, you keep doing it. But it was very interesting to me the number of times that Glennon got decked, standing almost directly behind the center, and just lofted the ball out of bounds when the defender was a step away, or potentially hanging off of him. And if there's a defender hitting him in a way that reroutes his pass, that's one thing that they're not supposed to call it that way. But technically, there were about 6 times at least that they could have called intentional grounding on this. I didn't keep a tally sheet because it's one of those things that started to dawn on me as I'm watching the game. But it's not anything I've heard anybody point out, and because of the result of the game, it didn't change the result of the game. But there were a number of times that they could have called grounding on him as a technicality.
Yeah, but I think it would have been hard to, because on most of those there, yes, he was in the pocket, but if you're throwing the ball 30 yards out of the back, 30 yards in the air, and it's going out of the back of the end zone, and you have a receiver within...
I'm not talking end zone. I'm not even talking end zone.
Okay.
I'm talking sideline. It's 100% a sideline thing. And it was literally lofting the ball, to the bench area as somebody was bearing down on him, or 3 guys were bearing down on him.
23 for 44, 187 yards, no touchdowns and interception. And when you look at Landon Roberts dropping a very easy interception in this game, as well as Xavier Howard and Javon Holland, also another time, in addition to Xavier Howard's interception, wrestling over another pass that fell to the ground in the end zone. Could have very easily been 3 interceptions instead of 1, and 5 or 6 sacks instead of 3. Speaking of which, Jalen Phillips gets 2 more sacks in the fourth quarter, or excuse me, both in the third quarter. I'd argue are coverage sacks, but what I like about him is he's able to use his size, his long arms, and he was opportunistic on both of those plays. Yes, it was about 5 or 6 seconds, which is an eternity to hold the ball as a quarterback, but he was able to track him down after he disconnected from Andrew Thomas, who he was going up against at the left tackle spot. So now Jalen Phillips needs a sack and a half to get to double digits on the season, would be one of 26 players in NFL history to get double-digit sacks.
Yeah,
as a rookie, excuse me.
And I love that you brought that stat up, but the other thing there too is walking people through that stretch and what the impact was of Jalen Phillips getting to Mike Glennon. They were shook, and that might be the point that Glennon ended up with his concussion, because they you had Jalen Phillips get in there for the first sack of the game for the Dolphins. And then the Giants got so mixed up on what to do and what to call that they had to burn a timeout to prevent a delay of game penalty. So coming out of the timeout, the Dolphins got their coverage right. Glennon was confused about anybody being open or not. Evan Engram was wide open on that one, actually. And Jalen Phillips managed to disengage, like you said, decked Mike Glennon. And then they were so mixed up again after the back-to-back sacks and the timeout in the middle and this and that they got a delay game penalty coming off of Jalen Phillips' second sack as well. Like, what an abysmal, embarrassing stretch of just unprepared goofiness.
Yeah, it was 3rd and 33 at one point on that drive. And, after two Jalen Phillips sacks in a row. And at that point, at the end of the third quarter ball, the Dolphins were winning 10-6, and that game was still at the point where it could have gone either way. The Giants were one big play away from taking the lead, and that big play almost came. Evan Engram was streaking wide open down the field, beat Nick Needham, who had a rough game against Evan Engram here. And Engram had 4 catches for 61 yards, but if Glennon puts that even in the solar system of Evan Engram there, I mean, we could be talking about a 5-catch, 140-yard game for Evan Engram, and the Dolphins are down 13-10 in the third quarter. I mean, so they got a break there, but I don't mean to bash Nick Needham or the rest of the defense. I mean, overall, 250 yards allowed defensively, 5th game in a row allowing 17 or fewer points.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say, too, just going back to Jalen Phillips, was later on, I believe it was in the fourth quarter, he completely snowplowed along the offensive line and opened Adam Butler up for another sack. And you look at the past 2 games, Jalen Phillips has 5 sacks between last week and this week. Holy crap. Rookie or no, that's an impressive statistic. And last week he could have had more. He absolutely should have had more.
And he is catching up on Micah Parsons for the sack. I believe Micah has 9. Phillips has 8.5. And I don't think there's a rookie in Odafe Owe for the Ravens, I believe has 5.5. But no, this is turning out to be a fantastic pick, as is Jalen Waddle, as is Javon Holland. And I can't say enough good things about Holland at defensive back. I mean, he had 2 major plays in this game. One of which was when it was a scoreless game and the Giants kicked a field goal on that drive. I mean, just to line up off the edge and blitz the way he did, and just get to the quarterback so quickly, and to blitz in a way with the technique where you're always hitting the quarterback in the ribs and in the right spot. It shows just a refined technique, not in terms of timing and in terms of just what to do when you actually get to the quarterback. And then there were 2 other plays that he was fighting with Xavier Howard over the ball. One was picked by Howard, one fell harmlessly to the ground. And then there was another play on a that could have been a 20-yard catch for the Giants. Javon Holland blew that play up. I mean, there are very few negative plays from this guy, and just 3 or 4 major plays every game from him over the last 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, and it's funny because if Miami didn't move around the way that they did in the draft, and don't get me wrong, Jalen Waddle, I'm very happy that we have him. We definitely needed him with the injuries, inconsistencies, all the things, absenteeism in the wide receiver room this year. They needed him for the offensive side of the ball 100%. But this is a defense that technically, if you didn't screw around, you could have added Micah Parsons, Jalen Phillips, and Javon Holland too with your first 3 picks with that move around defense, and been utterly disgusting with a defense that nobody has seen, led by 3 rookies. Just an interesting thing. And to go back to the Javon Holland plays you were talking about real quick, Javon Holland almost came down with the interception on that play in the end zone. I don't care if you're Mike Glennon. I don't care if you're Pat Mahomes. I don't care if you're Tom Brady. You don't really throw at Xavier Howard, let alone a double team of Javon Holland and Xavier Howard. What do you have to be drinking on the sideline to go out on the field and go, I'm going to throw it a double coverage of Javon Holland and Xavier Howard? I'm going to look for any other option at that point in time.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And to go back on your draft picks, yeah, it's what you said is true there. Yeah, you could have Phillips and you could have Micah Parsons, but I'm at the point now, I'm in a completely different mindset than I was 5 or 6 weeks ago, because at the time when the Dolphins were 1-5, 1-6, I thought, okay, you may have traded the 3rd overall pick in the draft to move back up to get Waddle. And at the time, Kyle Pitts was lighting the world on fire. Jamar Chase was lighting the world on fire. That's not the case anymore. Waddle might be the best receiver in this class now.
I 100% agree.
And now I look to it at Waddle, Jalen Phillips, and Javon Holland. You may have nailed. It looks like you've nailed those 3 picks. I wasn't saying that. We weren't saying that 5 or 6 weeks ago. Things have changed now, and that's exciting to say.
Yeah, I mean, 5 or 6 weeks ago, we were good with Waddle. We were okay with it. I mean, we were kind of looking at Pitts going, But we were looking at Parsons. We were going, oh, what got away? But at the same time, we knew the value Waddle had as a need pick as well. Jalen Phillips just looked like a blown pick probably 6-7 weeks ago. And Javon Holland was already playing very well and looked like a key component for the future. But it's what a great 3 selections in a row. If
the Dolphins can get a left tackle in the offseason, which I expect them to, kick Liam Eichenberg to left guard, and he's a serviceable player, and that's your 4th pick in that draft, I'd have to say I'm fine with it, and I'm willing to get that return from Eichenberg at this point. Hunter Long gets his first NFL catch, 8 yards, and we'll see. And just food for thought, Durham Smythe we see have, 25 catches, 253 yards in the year, and is on the field a lot. He wasn't on the field a lot his first year and a half either, and I don't think he caught a pass until like his 18th game or something like that. So, not saying I'm happy with the pick. I disagreed with the pick. I think Paul was on the same page with me on that.
Nope, we were on opposite pages with that one.
Okay, never mind. Then you got the egg on your face right now. Me, the genius, predicted that it would not be a great pick. I'm still kind of there, but hey, he's only 21, 22 years old.
Weird under the radar draft picks. Roll with me on. Just roll with me on them, because I'm doing okay with those. And I was a Hunter Long guy.
Oh, I thought you were gonna flip that around, and be like, hey, and for Cat, listen to the rest. That would have been
no. Like you're better than me typically with the first 2 rounds of the draft. It's the back end of the draft. Somehow I usually tend to find these like weird nuggets that I stick to and claim, and everybody goes, you're insane. And one of them is in the conversation for top 15 rookies from this draft, and he was a late round pick by the 49ers and is hurting the Dolphins' first round draft pick. And that's Eli Mitchell.
Yeah, Eli Mitchell. Yeah, he might be he's got almost 1,000 total yards on the year. I think he's 885 or something like that.
Could you imagine if Miami had him in the running back room? Good Lord.
Then again, the 49ers, anybody they take a running back turns to gold. So we'll keep that in mind too. But no, running backs, you've A.J. Dillon, Ramondre Stevenson, and
I wanted Miners. I wanted Miners so bad. Did you watch that video I sent you?
And Eli Mitchell. No, I didn't. I haven't yet. I'll get to it. And Eli Mitchell. No, those were 3 of like your 4 or 5 favorite running backs over the last few drafts. You don't like 17 guys like some of these other draft people here. So no, I give you full credit on that. But Paul, before we let this get away from us too much here, let's get to the grades here. Quarterback, with Tua, I am really close to giving him an A.
I'm closer than that.
Okay, I'm going to go A minus, only because of the stat line, even though the stat line probably should be better because of the receivers. Not necessarily dropping those 6 passes, but could have either been caught. They ranged from could have been caught, maybe should have been caught, to dropped. So I'm going to save an A for when Tua has a 350-yard, 4 or 5 touchdown game. So I'm going to go with an A minus for him here.
I'm going to go with an A. And those passes you just referred to, what I'm going to say on those is they were in a position where caught, not caught, dropped, not dropped, almost caught, shoulda, coulda, woulda. They were put in a position where only the Dolphins receiver could get to them. And that's the big key critical thing for me on that. And that's the next step as far as that accuracy goes, is putting the ball in a position that only the Dolphins players have a chance at it. And he's doing that. And he did that again this game. And I think he did that on more than those 6 that we talked about. Out of 11 incompletions. It's against a very good secondary that, like you pointed out earlier, I forget how many games it's been since they've not had a turnover. You watch
season.
Yeah. It's you watch their secondary. Their secondary is phenomenal. And Tua picked them apart.
Yeah, they were without Adoree Jackson and Darnay Holmes, their second and third cornerbacks in this game. But still, that doesn't replace, like, when Tua had over 80% completion against the Jaguars, you could watch that game and say, okay, there are receivers running wide open that entire game. That was not the case here. Tua had to work for all of that. I think the Giants defense overall played a good game. Mm-hmm. Tua just played better. And that's good to say at this point, because if he was just, when he was ripping up the Jets and ripping up the Falcons for 80% plus, I thought, well, those are 2 of the worst defenses in the league. When you do it against the Panthers and you do it against the Giants with how they've been playing, that's not the same case. And that's the exciting part to see. Running back, I'm going to throw it back to you on that.
Running back, this is where it's not so great for the Dolphins. I can't wait to have Philip Lindsay back. Our running backs are more complementary. This is a position of weakness for this team right now. They have their good moments, but then they have just 2-yard carries in between. Gaskin had a long of 6 on the day on 15 carries. That's not good enough. The holes were there at times, and just he doesn't hit the hole fast enough. We saw the difference between him and Lindsay as far as hitting the hole goes last week. And it's night and day. And what that does for the offense as a whole is huge. It's huge. And not good enough. I'm gonna go with a C.
Yeah, I'll match you there in the C. I mean, Javon Ahmed had the best run of the game. I think it was 10 or 11 yards, and he showed good vision on that run. Other than that, no, not good enough. And the Dolphins, it's really important that they get a running back in the offseason that can turn a 2-yard run into a 4-yard run. A bulldog who can put his head down and get what's there and push the pile forward. I am looking forward to seeing Philip Lindsay back as well. And Philip Lindsay's not even that good. I mean, but he's in terms
good
of
enough.
He's better than what the Dolphins have. And look, and this is the comparison I make with Myles Gaskin, is that it would be like the Patriots for several years in a row using James White as their bell cow. That's not his role. He's a receiver.
And before we move on from the running backs, sorry to jump back in. I know it's not normally how we do this, but I'm kind of to the point, and I'm glad one of our listeners brought this up in chat. I want to see Dokes get a couple of carries just to see. I don't think it could be worse than what we're seeing right now. The blocking is probably better. He probably would have kept Tua clean on that one that Gaskin whiffed. And he was a guy that didn't have that elite speed, but managed to hit the hole and hit the crease the right way in college. I want to see if he can do that in NFL action. And You throw 5 carries his way and take a couple off Gaskin, a couple off Ahmed in the process. Okay, I'm not hurt by that.
Yeah, I'd rather promote Dokes and see what we have than promote or reactivate Malcolm Brown, even if he's ready to come back soon. I mean,
Yes,
the Dolphins drafted Dokes in the 7th round. They thought enough of him to spend a draft pick on him, and they've protected him all season too. So they clearly think something is there, and I think he can add a power element. You know, putting his head down and getting 4 yards instead of 2 because of his power. That's a possibility. Receiver, you know, this is a very Jekyll and Hyde situation here because you can't ignore what Jalen Waddle did in this game, 9 catches for 90 yards. And one play we haven't talked about is with 3 minutes left, Mike Gesicki catches that pass in traffic. That ices the game. I mean, that is a special catch from a special player. Devonta Parker, like you talked about before, Dolphins scored 20 points in this game. On 2 of those drives where they scored 10 of their 20, Devonta Parker had those sideline tiptoe contested catches. They may not score 10 points, or those 10 points if that were the case. So, but they did drop or could have at least caught 6 or 7 of those. But it ended up making a difference in the game. So I'm just going to go with a solid B here.
I'm with you on that. It's for the drops. There was a lot of good. There was a lot of those tiptoe sideline catches, as you pointed out. And one thing I truly love, and I know I touched on this earlier, I can't recall, even when Parker had good games before, seeing a fired up, amped up Devonta Parker playing emotional football, celebrating his teammates, getting in an argument with a coach on the sidelines, and getting back out there and putting the effort in that we see on a down-to-down basis ever until this season. He's had his great moments. He's had his great games. But not that guy that really seemed to care. And you see it with him now. You could see it loud and clear, like he was holding up a neon sign this game. And a Devonta Parker that cares, I've seen it in chat a few times, I'm going to say it right now, needs to be on this roster. There's a place for him on this roster, even if he misses a few games a year. It's not a Preston Williams situation where he misses games and then comes back and drops a handful of passes here, a handful of passes there. This is somebody that's arrived and has embarrassed some of the best corners in the NFL at this point already. And he's got some longevity, and he's a very good piece to have in that receiver room, complementing guys like Jalen Waddle.
I will always advocate to have a talented player who gets hurt over spending that same money on an average player who doesn't. That's what it comes down to for me. And, you know, the Dolphins spent, $7 or $8 million a year a couple of years ago on Albert Wilson. And Devonta Parker was going for that same rate. Who would you rather have going into a season?
That's easy.
Devonta Parker, easy. The other part of it, too, is Devonta Parker at the end of the 2022 season is going to be approaching 30. And that gets into a different conversation there. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the offseason. But overall, I think we've been on the same page there with on Devonta Parker. Offensive line, we discussed this. Eichenberg lets up a sack. Austin Jackson lets up a sack. Jesse Davis has 4 pressures. Michael Dieter returns to the lineup, plays reasonably well. If you didn't hear his name much, that's a good thing. Robert Hunt did well at right guard, constantly the Dolphins' best lineman. So they're given to it more and more time to throw. Giants also are not great at rushing the passer. I'm going to go with a B- for the offensive line.
8 pressures in a game where Tua dropped back to throw 44 times. One time he took off with the ball. I think it was on one of those pressures. Twice he got sacked. That leaves you with 5. It's. I'm good. I'm fine with that. This line isn't special, but I can give him a solid B.
Fair enough. On the defensive side of the ball, like we talked about, no Daniel Jones, no Kadarius Toney, no Sterling Shepard. Saquon Barkley sucks. And I said this on a Giants podcast last week. He's terrible. And I said it the week before on a Panthers podcast because he had him in fantasy football. This guy sucks. I mean, I wouldn't sign him for nothing. He's terrible. Like, I mean, he had a 23-yard run and a 10-yard run. Other than that, he had 6 catches for 19 yards and didn't do anything on the ground. And those, yeah, bad. Then again, they did take him over Sam Darnold, so I guess they've got that going for him. Anyway, the Dolphins defensive line, I say, didn't abuse the Giants defensive line in this game, kind of what I thought they would, going up against Billy Price and, Will Hernandez and Nate Solder and these types of players, but solid game stopping the run other than a couple of big runs by Barkley and Booker, which, just one run each, one for 23, one for 17 yards on the same drive. Other than that, they were non-existent really on the ground. Jalen Phillips had the 2 sacks. I'd argue they were coverage sacks, but he still does get credit for them, and he showed a lot of pursuit in that. A 3rd sack by Adam Butler. I'm curious where was Emmanuel Ogbah in this game? I mean, 38 snaps, and I thought he would really make life tough for Nate Solder. That didn't quite happen, but this might be a lower grade than a lot of people were expecting. I'm just going to go with a B-.
You and I are in different camps on this one. They did a great job along the defensive line in stopping the run overall, and they got a lot of hits on Glennon. Not just and I'd say one of the sacks by Phillips was a coverage sack. I don't think the other really was. They forced Glennon in a lot of cases, combined with some of the linebacker blitzes and secondary blitzes that Miami runs, but overall, it's predominantly the front line. They forced Glennon into a lot of chuck and duck moments in this game. They've did a very good job you saw Sealer chased Saquon Barkley down on the sideline on one play. Christian Wilkins, I believe Travis put this out there, has the best run percentage win rate of any defensive lineman in the NFL, I think it was. And they split. Adam Butler continues to make his case for more and more reps each week. This is a defensive line with a lot of folks in the room. And part of the Ogbah thing is, I think his snap count's down, if I remember correctly. I believe
he had 38. He had 38 snaps in this game, and Phillips had 29. And that's not all that bad because it keeps them fresh throughout the game, and they give a lot of different looks on the defense. There are plays where they have Sealer, Raekwon, and Wilkins out there or Butler out there. They have 3 defensive tackles out there, and then they rush with Van Ginkel from that overhang linebacker spot. So,
yeah, and to really round out the snap count, Alan Poupart brought up the fact that along the defensive line, Ogbah had 38, Wilkins had 37, Davis 34, Sealer 33, and Butler 33. That's a very, very good round statistic. And the way that these guys are playing for each other, I can give them an A- along the D-line. I wish they would have gotten to pay dirt a few more times. But in all honesty, if they started calling the fact that Glennon was chucking it out of bounds when people were bearing down on him while he was still in the pocket, you probably would have seen the sacks falling in much greater numbers.
Yeah, I don't think they played a bad game, and I love this position in general. I really do. I thought that given how bad the Giants' defensive line was, the Dolphins could have done more. That's why I give them a lower grade than you do. Linebacker, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Linebacker, I have to say, as much as I've bashed this guy, this is one of the better games I've seen out of a Landon Roberts. And Jerome Baker, I don't have the problem with him nearly that some folks do. I thought he did a good job in this game. There wasn't a play where I went, damn it, Baker. There were a couple of times he blew through, even though he didn't get the sack. He was bearing down a lot on the running backs. This was and Andrew Van Ginkel played a great game, continued Miami's streak of games in a row with a batted pass. I can give this group it's probably the weakest group on D overall for this week, but that's not an insult. It's more of a compliment to everybody else. I can give the linebackers a B+. This defense is playing very, very well right now. Anytime you see somebody break a tackle, there's 4 Dolphins there to clean it up, and the linebacking core is a huge part of that.
Yes, and that's why I'm going to match you there in the B+, because of the speed every time that Devonta Parker or Saquon Barkley tried to reverse field in this game. There was nothing there, and that's a credit to the speed of the linebacker group. On that first time that the Giants scored, made it 3-0. I keep going back to Barkley had a 23-yard run. Booker had a 17-yard run right in a row. Ran over Baker on one play, Van Ginkel the next one. But that's really all I have to say bad about this unit, other than Landon Roberts dropping an interception. Interesting thing to keep an eye on, Landon Roberts 38 snaps in this game, Duke Riley 33 snaps. So Riley's starting to catch up, and he was out there shadowing Saquon Barkley in a few of those passes too. So I'm becoming a bigger Duke Riley fan as the weeks go on. Defensive back, and this is where, for a team that just allowed 9 points in the game, I'm going to go with an A again here. I mean, Xavier Howard, 4th interception of the year. Javon Holland, we talked about before. I mean, just 3 or 4 just changing plays, and just his ability to be a blitzer one play and a single high safety the next, and understand the risks and rewards of each play is truly special. No Brandon Jones in this game, but Eric Rowe did pretty well. Byron Jones led up 3 catches for 37 yards to Galladay. Galladay got hurt and then wasn't a factor in the second half. Nick Needham, I would say by far was the worst player on defense here today. I mean, or on Sunday, because he was tasked with Evan Ingram a lot. And, he's a defensive back. Ingram's a tight end. That should be a pretty even matchup there. But 4 catches for 61 yards, and it could have been tragic if Glennon had put the ball in the money to Evan Ingram in the third quarter. So, but that ball didn't get caught. And overall on the day, Mike Glennon, 22 for 43, 180-something yards, no touchdowns, an interception. Should have been more. One of the best defensive back units in the NFL. I'm going to give him an A again.
I am going to match your A. And in reality, I'm going to say this right now. I don't know if it's been said a lot. Javon Holland probably will not get this honor, but should be in the conversation for the Pro Bowl vote at this point. We're not even talking about rookie voting. We're talking about Pro Bowl voting. The man has been phenomenal. He's an emotional leader out there. He's making so many of the play calls on defense and adjusting the secondary. His football IQ is out of this world, and his playing ability matches that. This is a pick that we both kind of looked at first and went, really? But the Dolphins knocked it out of the park. And I saw earlier somebody mentioned Creed Humphrey in chat. It would have been nice to have Creed Humphrey, but Javon Holland is going to be a perennial All-Pro in this NFL based on what we've seen out of him all year long.
Couple things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things there, and because I want to stick on that point before we get too far away from it, is there were 3 or 4 safeties rated real close together, and they were Trayvon Merrick, who was my favorite, Richie Grant, who was your favorite, and then Javon Holland, who was not too far below both of them for both of us.
Yeah.
And my whole thing with Holland when they drafted him early in the second round, I didn't hate the pick. I was okay with it because my whole thing was, okay, if you're drafting a pure safety who is not playing college football last year because he opted out, he has to be special. I mean, otherwise there's just so little separating one safety from the other. This guy better come in and be a Budda Baker type. Well, I think he's going to be better than Budda Baker. I mean, I agree with you that if there are 4 safeties in the NFL in terms of Pro Bowl votes that are better than Javon Holland, how he's played this year, show them to me, because I can't find them. On the other hand, I don't think Holland because he doesn't have 4 or 5 interceptions and he is a rookie. Probably won't end up making it. But I could see the top 3 defensive rookies of the year in order being Micah Parsons, Javon Holland, Jalen Phillips. And I'm saying this off the cuff. There may be somebody else that I'm forgetting in that, but at least Holland and Phillips top 5 for defensive rookie of the year. I can't see 3 other guys or 5 other players that would be ahead of them.
I would struggle to find that as well. It's the way that they've come on and at the right time as well. They should lead some form of voting somewhere. And those two have basically shown up as cornerstone players, not just solid rookies, but cornerstone players and guys that fit so well into the defensive scheme. I wish Miami ran all year, because then we'd be talking about we've got the playoffs in hand right now instead of, God, I hope we make it.
Yep. And 2 things I want to point out here in the chat that's being said about a lot of Creed Humphrey talking. I said at the time I would have taken Creed Humphrey over Liam Eichenberg. I would have taken him in the second round with that fourth pick. And he was there at the time. Creed Humphrey went in the 60s. Liam Eichenberg was taken by the Dolphins in a trade up at 42. I did also say, too, that no, I wouldn't take him in the first round, because if you take a center in the first round, this guy better be the best center in the NFL immediately. Well, Creed Humphrey might be the best center in the NFL immediately. That part does sting. I'll admit that. So if you wanted Creed Humphrey earlier than what the Dolphins were willing to draft him, then I don't blame you on that. And he's going to be a perennial all-pro there for the Chiefs. They've been a great pick.
And I'm going to say this now. I do think Javon Holland ends the season with at least 5 interceptions, based on what we've seen the past few weeks. He's got 2 right now.
So
he's got 2.
Predicting 3 in his last 4 games?
Yep.
Okay.
Especially with the way that the D-line has come on, and the front 7 really is getting to the quarterback on a regular basis. I think Javon Holland is going to ball hawk the hell out of these last 4 games and come down with at least 3 interceptions.
I don't think he'll get 5 interceptions, because I think quarterbacks are just going to avoid him more, and that's a good thing.
The way he plays, though, you really can't all the time.
That's true.
Making some phenomenal breaks on the ball that he's going to win a few more of them, I think.
Yeah.
And there's bad quarterbacks coming. There are bad quarterbacks coming this way. Don't forget that factor as well. You got Wilson coming up next week, followed by Taysom Hill, and a Tannehill that's struggling without any weapons.
God, I want to kill Tannehill in that game. I mean, Julio Jones and A.J. Brown might be back for that game, and might be back right in time for that game, too. We'll see, because, yeah, I want to pound him into the ground.
But they might be playing hurt. They might be playing hurt with the Titans' playoff chances on life support. Or if the Titans are already well out of it at that point, they may rest the 2 of them and keep them on the shelf to get healthy for next year. Who knows?
Titans aren't going to be out of it. Titans are 2nd seed in the AFC right now. They've got. Yeah, that's.
I haven't looked. I don't remember what their matchups are coming up, but
not good. They're going to have 9 or 10 wins by the time the Dolphins play in Week 16.
There's not a lot of wins though that separate 10th seed and 2nd seed.
Just trust me. You've got they play the Jaguars in Week 14. There's 9 wins there. Then they play at Pittsburgh and then San Francisco at home. So they're 10 wins right there. I mean, I think the better hope is more of the hope, and I don't think that's a possibility either, is that they rest them for the playoffs, because they say, okay, we've already got 10 wins and we got the division wrapped up. So we'll see. A lot of things can unfold here over the next few weeks. Special teams are wrapping it up, Paul. Jason Sanders misses a 52-yard field goal, and then he barely makes a 48-yarder that puts the Dolphins up 20-9. I mean, he's just not a sure thing anymore. Matt Pilardi, I love when he's pinning somebody deep. When he's punting at midfield or right around that area, I like him more than Matt Hawk. Other than that, I don't, because he just doesn't have that strong leg. If he punts from the 50, he could pin you down inside the 5 and probably will. But if he punts from the 20, they're probably going to get the ball at the 40, at their own 40. So, it kind of is what it is. I don't like the kick return game. I'm kind of missing Jakeem Grant, but then again, the punt returners and the kick returners aren't fumbling, so I got to give them credit on that too. Overall, C+.
I'll match you on the C+. If it wasn't for a false start penalty, old Dong Sanders would have missed 2 in this game.
I'm not willing to go that far. One other thing I want to point out. One thing I want to point out too. You want to know why Noah Igbenogany's not on the field? The Dolphins went 29 minutes without a penalty in this game. Who got the first one? Noah Igbenogany, who didn't see the field. It was offsetting penalties, but yeah.
Did you watch that play on the All-22? I haven't yet.
No, I haven't. But
because it's the camera didn't catch what happened. I know he didn't have a helmet on, and 38 was laughing. So I don't know what happened in that one.
He probably was laughing because he looked at him and said, "You're Noah Igbenogany," and then he went back to the sideline. That's my guess, but we'll see.
I still want my fat guy fullbacks. Just saying.
Hey, put Christian Wilkins back there. I'm in full favor of it. Just don't spend an extra roster spot on it. I'm still in favor of not doing that. Paul, your player of the game and your Coke Bus player of the game.
Coke Bus player of the game. I am going to give to Albert Wilson. I had a few tough calls out there, but I'm going to give it to Albert Wilson in this one. I thought about giving it to Dong. Gesicki redeemed himself later on after some critical drops. But Wilson, to me, one of them would have been a little tough. The other was through his hands. Should have had 2 catches that would have been first downs in this game, and didn't really redeem himself in many other areas. To me, he was our worst wide receiver on the field in this one. And easily, he can go on that Coke Bus for me. As far as player of the game, I'm going to go with Tua. He should have set an NFL record with his 3rd straight game with 80+% completion percentage. And he didn't get to because of drops. So I will roll with Tua on this one.
I would have gone with Tua as well, given the unbelievably high completion percentage. Had even a few of those 6 passes been caught. And if they were caught, it would have extended those drives and he would have thrown for more yards. So my player of the game, I'm really back and forth between 2 guys, but I'm going to go with Javon Holland. This is a game the Dolphins allowed 9 points. And if you don't draft him early in the 2nd round and you have Bobby McCain back there still, look, we both liked McCain. We were upset that they cut him at the time. But what a difference he has made, especially in a game like this. I mean, he's all over the field. He's on the blitz, and he's somebody the quarterback now has to look out for. And that's a big compliment for a 2nd-round rookie. Coke Bus player, I'm going to go with Emmanuel Ogbah here. And I'm going to preface this by saying that it's hard to pick a Coke Bus player of the game here. And I'm tired of picking Jesse Davis every week or Liam Eichenberg, even though I probably should. Going up against Nate Solder, one of the worst right tackles in the NFL, I expected a little bit more of a dominant performance from it. Ogbah wasn't terrible in this game or anything, but I was just expecting a little bit more. I think this is our longest show ever.
Good Lord. No, not ever, but this is up there. I didn't even realize what time it was. I've been having so much fun talking Dolphins football that
it is fun when we're winning. And I'm going to end the show on this here. Back in 2013, when Paul actually joined on the FinSide with myself and with Brian Miller, It was a week after the Dolphins lost to the 0-7 Bucks on Monday Night Football. And that was during the Bullygate and the Jonathan Martin scandal. The quarterback in that game, Mike Glennon. So this is the Dolphins' revenge game 8 years later against Mike Glennon, and it brings not only Mike Glennon, but on the FinSide in full circle. And that's going to do it for our breakdown of the Dolphins versus Giants matchup and the Dolphins 20-9 victory. I'm Brian Cat NFL on Twitter, Paul's Fanatic _pick. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media outlets, as well as the finfanatic.com website and the Fansided Network. If it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the Fin side.